Late at night, the house was quiet. The streets outside were empty, and the only sound was the ticking of a small clock in the living room. Upstairs, in a dimly lit room, the man sat at his desk. His back was straight, his eyes fixed on something in front of him. To anyone else, it would look like he was simply lost in thought. But if someone looked closely, they would see his hands trembling, his breathing slow, and his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He knew this night was different. He had been waiting for it for a long time. The air in the room felt heavy, almost alive. Strange symbols shimmered faintly on the walls, glowing like fireflies but vanishing whenever he blinked. It was as if the room itself was trying to whisper a secret to him. He closed his eyes, trying to steady himself, but the whispers grew louder, like voices speaking in a language not of this world. At that exact moment, the door creaked open. The maid, a young woman who had worked in the house for years, stepped inside quietly. She carried a folded blanket in her arms, thinking he might have fallen asleep at the desk again. She often checked on him late at night, but tonight she froze in her tracks. Her eyes widened, and the blanket slipped from her hands onto the floor. What she saw was something no human was ever meant to see. The man did not notice her at first. He was too focused. His lips moved silently as if repeating words that did not belong to any human tongue. His body shook lightly, as though something powerful was passing through him, and in front of him, floating just above the desk, was a small sphere of light. It pulsed gently, like a living heart, and it filled the room with an eerie glow. The maid gasped, and finally, he turned his head. Their eyes met. She could not move. She could not speak. Her legs felt heavy. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run, but her body betrayed her. The fear was not just because of what she saw, but because of what she felt. Deep inside, her instincts screamed that this was not safe. This was not normal. The man looked at her calmly, almost with sadness. "You should not be here," he said softly, his voice lower than usual, carrying a strange echo. But she could not answer. Her eyes darted back to the sphere of light. It flickered, as if aware of her presence, and for a second she thought she heard a voice inside her head. It was not words, not exactly, more like a feeling, a command, a warning. The maid shook her head, her hands trembling. What is this?" she finally whispered, though her voice cracked. He sighed and closed his eyes. "The beginning," he murmured. She did not understand. None of it made sense. Why was there light floating in the air? Why was he glowing, whispering strange words? Why did the room feel like it belonged to something else, something not of Earth? The silence that followed was heavy. She stepped back, her heart racing, but something inside her told her she could not leave. Not now, not after seeing this. He rose slowly from the chair. The sphere of light hovered near him, almost like it followed his movements. For a moment it seemed to merge with his shadow, stretching unnaturally against the wall. "You saw too much," he said gently, almost with regret. "Now nothing will ever be the same for you." Her breath quickened. "Please," she whispered, "tell me what this is. Tell me what you are doing." He stared at her with tired eyes. His face looked human, but there was something else in his expression. Something ancient, something that did not belong here. Finally, he spoke again. "You think this world is silent, safe, ordinary. But it is not. It has never been." The maid's hands gripped the doorframe. She wanted to run, but she could not turn away. Deep inside, she knew he was right. The air felt wrong. The silence outside was too perfect. The house felt like it was standing in the middle of something vast, something watching. The man took one step closer. The light pulsed brighter, and she felt her skin prickle as if tiny sparks danced across it. "I tried to protect you from this," he whispered. "But now, you have seen it." Her voice trembled. "Seen what?" His eyes narrowed. "The truth." The room grew colder. The clock downstairs stopped ticking. The entire house seemed to hold its breath. The maid's mind screamed at her to escape, but she could not move. She realized that whatever was happening in this room was not only dangerous, it was something far bigger than both of them. He looked away, his voice dropping lower. "Tonight," he said, "everything changes. For you, for me, for all of us." The sphere of light pulsed once more, brighter than before, and the shadows in the room stretched like claws reaching for the walls. The maid felt her knees weaken. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. She knew, deep inside, that she had stepped into something that would follow her forever. This was not just a secret. It was the beginning of something far greater. And from that moment, nothing in her life or in the world would ever be the same again. The maid's hands were still shaking when she stepped back, but her eyes stayed fixed on the glowing sphere. It floated gently in the air, yet it felt alive, as if it were watching her. Each pulse of its light seemed to beat in time with her heart, making her chest tighten with fear. The man turned away from her and looked at the sphere. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a heavy weight, as though he had carried this secret for years. "You were not supposed to see this," he said quietly. "But now the choice is gone." The maid swallowed hard. Her throat was dry. "Choice? What? What is this? What are you doing?" He did not answer. Instead, he raised his hand slowly, and the sphere of light responded. It glowed brighter, humming softly like a swarm of bees trapped in a jar. Strange lines of light stretched from it and crawled across the walls. The symbols appeared again, shapes she could not understand, glowing faintly like fire etched into stone. The maid gasped. She felt the air thicken around her, pressing on her chest. The symbols looked ancient, too old to belong to humans, and yet they pulsed in a rhythm almost like they were alive. What is this language?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He glanced at her but said nothing. Instead, he touched one of the glowing symbols with his hand. At once, the entire wall shimmered like water, rippling outward. For a second, the room did not look like a room anymore. It looked like a window opening into something vast and endless. The maid's breath caught. She stumbled forward without realizing, unable to look away. On the other side of that strange window, she thought she saw stars, thousands of them, spread across a black sky. But there was something else too, something darker. A shape moving slowly among the stars. Her heart froze. She blinked and the vision was gone. The wall was solid again. The symbols faded, leaving only the sphere's soft glow. She clutched the doorframe, her knees weak. I saw something," she whispered. The man finally looked at her. His voice was low, steady. "Yes, you saw. And now you understand. This world is not alone." Her lips trembled. "Aliens?" He did not answer. Instead, he walked closer to the sphere. It floated near him, circling like it was bound to him. He placed his hand over it, and the humming grew louder. "The signs began months ago," he said. "I felt it before anyone else. Lights in the sky, whispers at night, shadows moving where no shadow should be. They marked me, chose me." The maid shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Marked you? Chose you? For what?" His eyes darkened. "For the test." Her heart raced. The word felt heavy, dangerous. "A test of what?" But before she could ask, the sphere pulsed violently. A wave of energy rippled through the room. The lights flickered. The clock downstairs groaned and stopped again, and the floor itself seemed to shake. The maid cried out, stumbling backward, but the man raised his hand and the shaking stopped. Silence filled the room again, but it was not peaceful silence. It was the silence of something waiting. She pressed her back against the wall. Her voice trembled. You're not the man I thought you were. Who are you?" For a moment, his face softened. "I am still human," he said. "But humans, we are more than we know. And they—" He gestured toward the sphere. "They fear us for it." Her breath caught. "Fear us? But why?" He walked closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally behind him. "Because we are dangerous, more dangerous than we realize, and soon you will see why." The maid felt her stomach twist. His words were simple, but the way he said them filled her with dread. She looked at the sphere again, and for a brief moment she thought she saw something inside it. An eye. A cold, watching eye that stared back at her. She gasped and stepped back. "It's alive!" He shook his head. "Not alive. Not dead either. It is a messenger." "A key," her voice cracked. "A key to what?" He did not answer. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the window. The night outside was dark, but she noticed something strange now. The sky looked different. Too many stars. And some of them were moving. The maid's chest tightened. "What's happening?" He lowered his head, his voice heavy. "They are here." Her blood ran cold. The room darkened suddenly, the light from the sphere pulling inward as if hiding itself. The symbols on the walls vanished completely. Only the man's faint glow remained, and even that was fading. She could not breathe. The silence outside was no longer natural. It felt like the entire world was holding its breath. Then she heard it. A faint sound from far above, like a low hum rolling across the sky. It grew louder, stronger, shaking the glass in the windows. The maid clutched her chest, her heart pounding. The man did not move. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a strange fire. "They are watching us," he whispered. "And they are waiting." The maid shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Waiting? For what?" He turned slowly toward her. His voice was low but sharp like a blade. "For me." The sphere pulsed once, and the room fell into complete silence. The maid's body was frozen against the wall. Her eyes darted between the glowing sphere and the man who now looked less like the master she had served for years, and more like something she did not recognize. The hum outside grew faint again, but the silence left behind felt heavier than before. She tried to force words past her trembling lips. They are waiting for you." "Why? What do they want?" The man's gaze did not leave the window. His shoulders rose and fell slowly, as if he carried a weight far greater than his own body. Finally he turned to her. "They want proof," he said simply. Her eyebrows furrowed. "Proof of what?" His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Of humanity. Of what we truly are." The maid's breath hitched. His words made no sense, but they felt important, like pieces of a puzzle too big for her mind. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will," he said. His voice carried a strange sadness, like a man confessing a sin. He stepped closer to the sphere, which floated around him like a loyal guardian. "For years they have watched us, waiting, judging, and then they chose me." Her hands clutched her dress tightly. "Chose you? For what?" His expression darkened. "To stand as a voice, a bridge, a test." The maid shook her head in disbelief. This is madness." "You're talking about aliens, about voices in the dark, about tests." "You're scaring me." He lowered his gaze. "You should be scared. You saw the signs. You felt it when you walked in. The air pressing down, the symbols on the wall, the light inside this room. That was not madness. That was truth." The maid pressed her hands to her ears as if trying to block him out, but deep down she knew he was right. She had seen it. She had felt it. No dream could explain what she witnessed. Her eyes darted back to the sphere. What is that thing?" The man sighed. "It is not a thing. It is a fragment. A shard of them. A messenger. And a judge." Her body went cold. "A judge?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, it sees what we are. It measures us. It decides if we are worthy or dangerous." The maid's voice cracked. "And if it decides we are dangerous?" His eyes met hers, sharp and unblinking. "Then humanity will not survive." The words hit her like a blade to the chest. She staggered, clutching the wall to steady herself. You can't be serious." He stepped closer, his face calm but his voice steady with certainty. "I wish I wasn't, but I have carried this burden too long to doubt it." Every night they come closer. Every night the sphere whispers more. And every night I realize the truth: humans are different. More different than even we know. The maid's eyes widened, fear mixing with confusion. "Different? How?" He hesitated, as if unsure how much to tell her. Then with a weary breath he spoke. "Aliens do not fear weapons. They do not fear armies. They fear something only humans have. Something that grows stronger with each generation. Something they cannot control." The maid leaned forward despite her terror. What is it?" His eyes softened, but his voice was sharp as steel. "Will." She blinked, confused. "Will?" "Yes," he said firmly. "The human will. The power to resist, to fight against impossible odds, to rise when everything else falls. No other race in the stars has it. Only us." The maid's lips parted, but no words came. She could not deny what she felt in his voice, an unshakable truth. "They fear us," he continued, "because they know, if humanity survives long enough, we will not only join the stars, we will rule them." Her stomach dropped. The idea was impossible, absurd, and yet she believed him. The room grew colder again. The sphere pulsed brighter, its glow filling every corner of the room. And this time the maid heard it clearly, a voice inside her head. "You are not ready." She gasped, covering her ears. "I heard it. I heard something." The man nodded. "Yes, it speaks now. It knows you can feel it. That is the beginning of the connection." Her heart raced. No, I don't want this. I don't want to hear it." He stepped closer, his hand raised gently. "You already have. And once it speaks, it never stops. You cannot unsee. You cannot unhear. Tears filled her eyes.
Why me? Why did I have to walk in tonight?
His expression grew heavy with regret. Because fate chose it, and fate is never kind. The maid slid down against the wall, her body trembling. Her world had shattered in a single night. The man she thought she knew was no longer just a man. The world she thought she lived in was no longer safe, no longer ordinary. Everything was different now, and worst of all, she realized she was now part of it. The man lowered his voice almost a whisper. Do you see now why I said nothing will ever be the same? You are marked, just like me. The sphere has seen you. It has judged you. Her lips quivered. Judged me? For what? He turned his head, listening to the hum of the sphere. For a long moment he was silent. Then he said, It judged your fear. And it found it interesting. The maid's breath caught. The word interesting was worse than terrifying. It meant she was noticed. She was not invisible. She was now part of whatever was coming. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it would burst. She looked at him desperately. What happens now? He glanced toward the window again. Outside, one of the stars seemed to move, sliding across the night sky like an eye turning to watch. His face hardened. Now, they come. The room grew dark. The sphere pulsed violently, and the silence shattered with a low, distant roar that shook the earth. The roar outside grew louder, like thunder rolling across the heavens. The maid pressed her hands over her ears, but the sound wasn't only in the air. It was inside her chest, rattling her bones, making her heart pound against her ribs. The man stood still, his gaze fixed on the window. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a strange light. The sphere floated close to him, pulsing faster as if it too was waiting for something. The maid gasped, struggling to breathe. What is that sound? What's happening? He did not turn to her. They are here. Her blood turned to ice. Outside, the night sky flickered. For a brief moment, the stars themselves seemed to vanish, swallowed by a massive shadow that moved across the heavens. Then slowly, a faint glow appeared above the trees, a ship silent but enormous, its surface shining like liquid metal. It didn't roar like a machine. It hummed like a living thing. The maid's knees buckled. Oh my God, she whispered. The ship descended silently, stopping just above the ground. No flames, no smoke, only that unnatural hum that seemed to vibrate through the entire world. The lights from the craft washed over the house, bathing the walls in pale blue. The man's lips curved into the faintest smile, though it was not of joy. It was the smile of someone who had expected this for a long time. They have come for me, he said softly. The maid clutched the edge of the door frame, her body trembling. No, this isn't real. This can't be real. But then she saw them. Figures stepped out of the ship. Tall, slender shapes with skin that shimmered like glass under the light. Their movements were slow but graceful, like water flowing. Their faces were hidden beneath smooth masks. But their presence carried a weight, an intelligence so vast it made her mind ache just to look at them. She staggered back, nearly tripping over the blanket she had dropped earlier. They're here. In front of us. The man finally turned to her, his voice low and steady. Do not run. Do not scream. They already know you are here. Her heart sank. The front door of the house creaked open by itself. The air grew colder, as if the night had poured straight into the living room. The maid gasped as she saw a faint shimmer in the hallway, like a ripple in the air. Slowly, the ripple shaped itself into one of the tall beings. It stood there, silent, glowing faintly. The walls of the house bent and flickered around it, as though reality itself did not know how to hold its shape near the creature. The maid could not breathe. Her mind screamed at her to hide, but her body refused to move. The man stepped forward calmly, facing the visitor. You came sooner than I thought. A sound filled the room. Not a voice, not exactly. More like vibrations that shook the air and the bones inside their bodies. The maid cried out and clutched her ears, but the sound was not only heard, it was felt. The man nodded slowly as if he understood the meaning hidden in that vibration. Yes, he said. She saw it. She is part of this now. The maid's eyes widened. No, I don't want to be part of anything, she shouted, but her voice cracked with fear. The alien tilted its head slightly, the glow on its body shifting like liquid. Then in her mind a voice whispered, calm, cold, and distant, Fear is useful. Fear is truth, she screamed and stumbled back, covering her face. Get out of my head! The man raised his hand and the sphere of light pulsed, sending a wave of energy across the room. The alien shimmered as if testing the barrier. The hum grew louder. They are not here to kill us, the man said softly. Not yet. They are here to see, the maid gasped. See what? His eyes met hers. Whether humanity deserves to live. Her body turned cold. She shook her head violently. That's insane. How could they decide something like that? Who are they to judge us? The alien stepped closer, its body moving without sound. Its presence filled the room with crushing weight, like standing beneath an ocean. The maid fell to her knees, her vision swimming. The voice returned, echoing inside her skull. You are young. You are dangerous. You will rise, or you will fall. Tears streamed down her face. Please, please, I don't want this. The man crouched beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. Listen to me. This is not about what you want. This is about survival, about proving who we are. The sphere of light hovered closer to them both, glowing brighter, filling the room with harsh shadows. The alien tilted its head again, and then, without warning, more shapes appeared behind it, 3, 4, 5 of them. They stepped into the house as easily as if the walls were mist. The maid cried out, curling against the floor. There are more. They're everywhere. The man's expression hardened. He stood tall, his shoulders squared. This was always the plan. Tonight the test begins. The hum grew louder, rattling the glass of the windows. The aliens formed a circle around the man and the maid, their bodies glowing like stars pulled down to earth. The air thickened, pressing against their lungs, making it hard to breathe. The maid clawed at the floor, desperate for escape, but she knew there was no running. No hiding. The house was no longer a house, it was a stage. The man lifted his chin, his voice clear and strong. I will not fail. Not tonight. Not for them. And not for us. The aliens shimmered, their bodies bending the air around them, and then in perfect unison the voices filled the room. The test begins. The sphere exploded in light, and everything vanished in blinding white. The white light faded slowly, and the maid gasped for breath as darkness returned. She blinked several times, her heart racing, her lungs burning as though she had been drowning. The room looked the same, but it no longer felt the same. The walls seemed thinner, the air heavier. The man stood tall in the center of the room. The aliens surrounded him, their glowing bodies casting shifting patterns across the floor. The sphere hovered above his head, spinning slowly, its hum now deep and steady like the beating of a giant heart. The maid clutched the floor, trembling. What just happened? She whispered. The man did not answer at first. His eyes were locked on the beings around him. Their faces were hidden, but their silence carried power. They were waiting. Finally, one of them moved. Its body shimmered like liquid glass, and the air rippled as it stepped forward. A voice filled the maid's head, not spoken but pressed into her thoughts. The choice must be made. The maid cried out, covering her ears, though she knew it was useless. The voice was inside her mind, echoing with weight and finality. What choice? She shouted desperately. The man turned his head slightly, his face grim. The choice of survival, her eyes widened. Survival? Of who? Of all of us, he said. The alien's voice pressed into their thoughts again, cold and sharp. One stands. One is judged. One carries the fate of the many. The maid's breath caught. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would break her ribs. She stared at the man, unable to believe what she was hearing. They mean you? He nodded once. His eyes glowed faintly in the sphere's light. Yes, I was chosen. I must prove humanity's worth. If I fail... He paused, his gaze darkening. Then Earth falls. The maid shook her head violently, her voice cracking. No, that's impossible. How can one man decide the fate of everyone? The alien's voice returned, colder than before. You are not chosen. You are not ready. You are not safe. He is the test. He is the proof. The maid sobbed, pressing her palms into the floor. Why him? Why not anyone else? The man's jaw tightened. Because they marked me. They see something in me, something they fear or something they need. The maid looked at him desperately. And if you fail? He turned his gaze toward her. For the first time she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Then humanity will be erased. Her body went numb. She could not breathe. The words struck her harder than any weapon. Erased, not just destroyed but wiped away as if humanity had never been. The aliens stood motionless, glowing faintly, their presence heavy and suffocating. The sphere pulsed brighter, and for a moment the maid thought she saw images inside it. Cities burning, oceans boiling, stars collapsing. The visions were gone in an instant, but her heart screamed in terror. She gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. This can't be real. This can't be happening. The man crouched slightly, his voice firm but quiet. Listen to me. It doesn't matter if it feels real. It is real, I cannot escape it. And now neither can you. Her tear-filled eyes met his. But how can you fight them? They're too powerful. His lips curved into a faint, grim smile. Not with strength. Not with weapons. But with something only humans have. She remembered his words from before. Will, she whispered. He nodded. Yes, that is our weapon. That is our hope. The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time, filling the room with harsh white light. The alien voices spoke in unison, echoing in both their minds. Choose, accept, or refuse. The end will follow either way. The maid's head spun. She felt dizzy, her body heavy. She forced herself to whisper, "What does that mean?" The man stood straighter, his voice sharp and steady. "It means I must accept the test, or reject it. But either way, the judgment will come." Her stomach twisted. "So if you refuse, they'll destroy us. And if you accept, you might fail." "Yes," he said. Tears spilled down her face. "Then why accept it? Why not refuse and fight them?" His eyes hardened. "Because there is no fighting them. Not now, not yet. The only chance we have is to prove ourselves, to show them why humanity deserves to live." The maid shook her head, choking on her tears. "But it's not fair. You didn't choose this. You didn't ask for this." His gaze softened. "No, but sometimes fate does not ask. It only takes." The alien closest to them shifted, its body rippling with faint light. The voice pressed into their minds again. "Time ends. Choose." The sphere flared, its glow blinding. The man closed his eyes, inhaling slowly as though he were breathing in courage itself. "I accept," he said. The room shook with a deep vibration, the air trembling as if the house itself had heard his words. The maid screamed and covered her face, but the sound carried no heat, no fire. It was the sound of reality bending. The alien stepped back in unison. The circle around them widened, the air humming louder and louder. The sphere rose higher, spinning faster, glowing until it was brighter than the sun. The man stood tall, his voice steady. "Then let the test begin." The maid collapsed to her knees, her hands shaking. She could barely breathe as the alien voices echoed one final time. "The choice is made. The judgment begins," and with those words, the floor beneath them cracked with light, and the world itself seemed to fall away. The floor split with light, and the maid screamed as the ground beneath her dissolved into nothingness. She clung to the edge of the desk, her nails scraping against the wood. The room around her twisted and bent as though reality itself was peeling away like torn fabric. The man did not move. He stood tall as the floor vanished beneath his feet, leaving him suspended in a space that no longer looked like a room. Darkness stretched endlessly in every direction, pierced by faint stars. The walls, the ceiling, the house, everything was gone. The maid cried out, her voice trembling. "Where are we? What's happening?" The man did not turn. His gaze was fixed ahead, his eyes burning with strange light. "The test has begun." The sphere hovered above them, its glow brighter now, almost blinding. The aliens stood in a wide circle, their tall, shimmering bodies motionless. They no longer looked like visitors. They looked like judges in some cosmic court. Suddenly, the sphere pulsed and the stars around them shifted. Images appeared in the darkness, swirling like smoke. Burning cities, oceans swallowing entire continents, skies filled with fire. The maid gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. The alien voice pressed into her mind again. "Humanity destroys. Humanity consumes. Humanity falls." She shook her head violently. "No, that's not true. Not all of us." The man raised his chin. "These are not visions of truth," he said firmly. "These are illusions, tests." The images changed. Now the maid saw people she knew, neighbors, friends, family standing in the darkness, their eyes hollow, their faces twisted with anger. They shouted at her, accusing her, their voices merging into a storm. "You are weak. You are selfish. You are nothing." She clutched her ears, sobbing. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." The man stepped forward, his voice calm but strong. "Do not listen. They are shadows. They feed on fear." The sphere pulsed again, brighter, and the illusions faded. Silence returned, but it was not peaceful. It was sharp, like the pause before a blade strikes. The maid wiped her tears, her body trembling. Why are they showing us this? The man's eyes narrowed. Because they want me to break. They want me to surrender. The aliens shifted, their glowing bodies bending the air around them. Another wave of energy rippled across the space and new visions appeared. This time the maid saw the man himself, but not as he was. She saw him kneeling, broken, his hands chained, his face twisted in defeat. The voice filled their minds. This is the end of your kind. You cannot resist. You cannot rise, the maid cried out. Don't listen. Please don't listen. The man closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. His body trembled, but his voice remained steady. I am human. And humans do not kneel. The illusions cracked. The image of his broken self shattered like glass, the sound echoing through the void. The aliens tilted their heads, their glow flickering. The maid's eyes widened. You broke it. He nodded, his gaze sharp. Because will cannot be chained. The sphere spun faster, its hum growing louder. Another wave of illusions came. This time fire and blood, endless battles, screams of the dying. The maid fell to her knees, clutching her chest, certain her heart would burst. But the man stood firm, his eyes unblinking. No, he said loudly, his voice echoing in the void. This is not who we are. We fight, but we fight to survive. We fight to protect. That is our truth. The illusions trembled. The fire flickered. The screams faded into silence. The maid looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. You're beating them. He did not smile. His face was stern, focused. The test is not over. The aliens stepped closer now, their forms towering like living statues of light. The air thickened until the maid could barely breathe. The sphere dropped lower, spinning so fast it blurred into a ring of fire. Then, the final illusion struck. The maid gasped as the darkness around them transformed into a battlefield. She saw Earth itself burning, cities crumbling, the sky black with smoke, oceans boiling. And there, in the center of the chaos, stood the man, holding her lifeless body in his arms. She screamed in horror, falling backward. No, that's not real. That's not me. The man's face twisted in pain, but he did not look away. His voice cracked but did not break. This is your last trick. You prey on my fear of loss. But fear is not weakness, the alien voices thundered in unison. Then show us. Show us why you endure. The man raised his head, his voice rising like a blade cutting through the void. Because humans endure everything, pain, loss, darkness, and still, we rise. The battlefield trembled. The burning cities flickered. The lifeless body in his arms dissolved into smoke. The maid sobbed, her hands shaking. You did it again. The sphere exploded with light, brighter than before, filling the void with pure white. The aliens stepped back, their bodies rippling like waves against the shore. The hum grew softer. The illusions were gone. Only silence remained. The maid sat on the ground, gasping for breath, her heart pounding. The man stood tall, his chest rising and falling heavily, his body trembling but unbroken. The alien voices filled the space one last time. The test is not complete, but the will is strong. Stronger than expected. The maid wiped her tears, whispering, So, does that mean we're safe? The man's eyes narrowed. No, it means the final judgment is yet to come. The sphere dimmed, its glow fading into a faint pulse. The aliens turned away, their bodies shimmering as they stepped back into the darkness. The silence that followed was unbearable. The maid clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. What happens now? The man closed his eyes, his voice heavy with both hope and fear. Now, they decide. The silence stretched endlessly. The maid sat on the floor, her body weak, her breath shallow. Every muscle trembled from fear and exhaustion. The sphere hovered above them, its glow dim now, pulsing like a dying ember. The aliens stood motionless, their tall bodies shimmering faintly in the void. The man remained on his feet, though his shoulders sagged under invisible weight. His chest rose and fell heavily, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had endured the illusions. He had resisted the fear. Yet he knew this was not the end. The maid whispered hoarsely, her throat raw. Is it over, please? Tell me it's over. He shook his head slowly. Not yet. They are still watching. Still judging? Her heart sank. She had hoped the nightmare was finished. But the way the alien stood, silent, patient, unblinking, told her it was far from over. The sphere pulsed once, brighter, and the alien voices pressed into their minds. The test is endured. The choice is made. Now comes judgment. The maid covered her ears, sobbing. No more, please, no more. The man stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight pressing down on him. You have seen what you wanted. You have measured me. You have measured us. Now tell me, do we deserve to live? The aliens tilted their heads, their bodies flickering like fire caught in the wind. The silence that followed was unbearable. The maid felt her heartbeat pound in her ears, every second stretching into eternity. Then the voices spoke again. Human will is strong, stronger than expected. It defies order. It defies fear. It will not break, the maid gasped. Her heart leapt with fragile hope. So, that means we're safe? We passed? But the man's expression remained grim. He knew better than to celebrate too soon. The voices continued, colder now. Strength is danger. Endurance is threat. The will you carry will spread. It will rise beyond your world. It will consume the stars. The maid's hope shattered. No, that's not true, she cried. We're not a threat. We're just trying to live. The man clenched his fists, his jaw tight. So that is it. You fear us. That is why you came. Not to test us, but to decide if we must be destroyed before we grow. The sphere pulsed violently, its glow harsh and blinding. The aliens took a step forward in unison, their presence pressing like a mountain of weight upon them both. The voices thundered. Humanity stands at the edge. One step forward and the stars will burn. We must decide, let you rise or end you now, the maid screamed. Please don't hurt us. Don't destroy us. Tears streamed down her face, her body collapsing into sobs. She had never felt so small, so powerless. The man placed a hand over the sphere, his voice rising in defiance. You do not decide our fate. We do. We choose to rise. We choose to endure, no matter what you say. The sphere shook violently in his hand, the light bursting in waves across the void. The aliens flickered, their bodies rippling like shattered glass. The voices roared, shaking the space itself. You defy judgment. You claim freedom. You claim will. Then prove it. The void erupted with blinding light. The maid screamed as her vision burned white, her body thrown backward as if a great wind had struck her. She felt herself falling, spinning through endless nothing. Then silence. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the room. The desk was there, the walls, the clock ticking faintly downstairs. Everything looked the same. But it was not the same. The man stood by the window, the sphere floating dimly beside him. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched. His eyes glowed faintly still, though weaker now, like the fire inside him had been drained. The maid struggled to her feet, her voice shaking. What happened? Did we survive? He did not answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the night sky outside the window. The stars looked brighter now. Too bright, too close. Finally he spoke. His voice was low, heavy. They left. For now. Her breath caught. For now? What does that mean? He turned to her slowly, his expression grim. It means they did not destroy us tonight. But they are not finished with us. They will watch. They will wait. And one day, they will return. The maid's chest tightened. So all of this, it isn't over? He shook his head. No, this was only the beginning. She stumbled forward, clutching his arm desperately. But why? Why us? Why humanity? His eyes met hers, sharp and unyielding. Because we are dangerous. Because we are strong. Because in their hearts they know the truth. Humans will not only survive the stars. We will master them. The room fell silent. The clock ticked again, each sound heavy in the stillness. The maid's tears dried slowly on her cheeks, but her heart continued to race. She looked at him, her voice trembling. And what about you? What happens to you now? He glanced at the sphere, still glowing faintly by his side. His lips curved into a bitter, tired smile. I remain chosen. Their eyes are on me, and through me, on all of us, until the day they return. The maid shivered. She knew her life would never be the same. She had seen too much, felt too much. The truth was no longer hidden. The universe was not silent. It was watching. From that night on, she never looked at humans the same way again. For now she knew the truth. Humans were feared across the stars, and fear was only the beginning.